friends in the pits and you take no prisoners. 1 minute you're up 500,000 in soybeans, and the next, boom, your kids don't go to college and they've repossessed your Bentley. Are you with me?
The revolution starts now.
We have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Turn those machines back on!
You are about to enter the Peter Schiff Show.
Show me the money!
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on Earth.
The Peter Schiff Show is on. Call in now. 855-4-SCHIFF. That's 855-472-4433.
I don't know when they decided that they wanted to make a virtue out of selfishness.
Your money, your stories, your freedom. The Peter Schiff Show.
Welcome, everybody. This is Peter Schiff here at SchiffRadio.com, coming to you live from the exhibit floor of the New Orleans Investment Conference, where I'm doing the show from the Euro-Pacific Capital booth. Anyway, I will be back again in my studio in Weston, Connecticut on Monday, where we resume regular Peter Schiff shows, but it's been fun doing the show the last couple of days from here in the New Orleans conference. And, of course, having to wake up early to do this show has maybe impeded on the nightlife here in New Orleans. If you've never been down here, it is quite a show. Anyway, at least I'm still going to be here, though, for a couple more days, so I got a little bit more time left to partake in the nightlife and the festivity here in New Orleans. And, of course, you know, I'm going to miss Halloween. I'm actually leaving on Sunday. Last year I was here at the conference, and I was in New Orleans for Halloween night in a big parade they have down Bourbon Street and the Canal Street. And so if you've never seen that, it is definitely something worth seeing if you happen to be in New Orleans Halloween night. I think maybe next to Mardi Gras, it might be one of the best times to be here if you want to, enjoy the merriment. Anyway, getting back into the news, I want to talk a little bit about President Obama and the fact that he is now kind of acting more like a dictator than a president. Look at what he's been doing with his recent executive orders. And I'm going to let his press secretary, Jay Carney, actually lay out what he told reporters at a White House briefing, exactly what the president is doing. And let's decide whether or not we think any of this is constitutional. And where are the Republicans? Why are they asleep? Why are they letting them get away with it? And what about the courts? Why isn't anybody reining in the usurpation of power taking place out of the White House right now, as the president clearly is taking actions that are not authorized by the Constitution? Here is his White House press secretary, Carney. Here, play cut number 3.
The president set up legislation that the same House did not see fit to pass it. In fact, it didn't even vote on it. Okay. What gives the president the right to do this by executive order? Well, why not? I think, Mike, where are you confused by? He's not passing the American Jobs Act by executive. No, it's not. The executive actions are not pieces of the American Jobs Act. The pieces of the American Jobs Act are in legislative form because they require congressional action. The things he is doing administratively through executive powers are things that he can do. The things that do not require legislative action, so he is exercising that power.
Well, first of all, what things? What things is he able to do? And at least the press is right in asking the question, what gives him the authority to do this? Because the president has already said if Congress will not act, he will take it upon himself to act. By what authority can he do that? That is the point. Anyway, the press asked for a little bit more clarification. He provides it. We'll continue. Cut number 4.
It took him so long. He has been exercising his executive authority throughout his presidency to help the economy, to help Americans. I mean, you know, the fact is that it's getting more prominence now because of the obvious to everyone dysfunctionality of the Congress, the obstructionism that we're seeing in the face of what is clearly the number one priority of the American people. Again, Americans left, right, and center.
Well, here, they actually, in that clip, they're not pressing for more clarity. They're actually taking the bait, and saying, well, if all this is legal, what took him so long? If he could just fix the economy by executive order, why hasn't he fixed it already? Anyway, cut number 5.
I mean, I've spoken from this podium even since I've had this job about executive actions he's taken, including prior to the refinancing announcement on Monday, the actions he took through executive authority to provide forbearance for the unemployed, to give them a better chance of staying in their homes and paying their mortgages. So he has done and will continue to take the kinds of actions he can as president without Congress to help Americans, to help them deal with this economy, to help them deal with their debt, deal with their mortgages, and through a variety of other measures that he has taken and will take.
See, now he finally gives one example, and I have other examples of where the president has, by executive order, done things that are really should be left to the legislature, but they use the example of providing mortgage forbearance for people who are unemployed. Now, what right, where in the Constitution does the president have the right to do that by executive order? Because even the Constitution says that all revenue bills, right, have to be originated in the House, and this really, this is spending money. This is spending taxpayer money, because if we're going to give forbearance, if people don't have to pay their mortgages, then who's going to pay them? Right? President Obama is committing Americans to pay the mortgages of the people who he gives forbearance to. And if the president can say that somebody who's unemployed doesn't have to pay their mortgage, well, he can say that nobody has to pay their mortgage. The president could just, by judicial decree, just say that all mortgage debt is null and void. Does he have the right to do that? Of course he doesn't. Well, if he doesn't have the right to do that, he doesn't have the right to excuse mortgage payments. If Congress wants to do that, then Congress needs to pass it, and then the president can sign it. But he just can't do it. I mean, think about what he just did with the student loans. As part of the health care bill, put into legislation in the health care bill was this idea that student loans would be forgiven, right? The takeover of the student loan industry by going away from government-guaranteed student loans to government-provided student loans, that was all accomplished through legislation that was part of the Health Care Act. It was buried in there. It got very little discussion or debate, but it was in the bill. And also in that bill was this idea that student loan payments would be capped at 15% of your disposable income, which was income above 150% of the poverty line, and that the debt would be forgiven after 25 years. Now, that was a bad thing to have done. That really gave a green light to colleges to jack up tuitions even faster, because it was telling students not to worry about the high tuitions because you're not really going to have to pay back all the money you're borrowing. A lot of it is actually a gift. Now, that was a bad idea. But the president now, through executive order, has made it a worse idea, because now, instead of capping payments at 15%, he's capping payments at 10%, and he's forgiving the mortgages not after the student loans, not after 25 years, but after only 20 years. Now, how can he do that by executive order? If he had to pass the original bill as part of an act of Congress, how can he now change what Congress enacted on his own without any votes? He can't. And, of course, if the president can, simply by executive order, say that that student loan payments are capped at 10% of disposable income, then he can change it to 5%. He can change it to 1%. If he can say that we're going to forgive your student loans after 20 years, even though Congress said it's 25, if he could just unilaterally by decree reduce that to 20, well, then he can reduce it to 15. He can reduce it to 10. He can reduce it to 0. He can unilaterally, by executive order, simply forgive all the student loans. Can the president do that? Does he actually have the power? What happened to checks and balances? And, if the president can do those things by executive order, why can't he do more things? Why can't he change the income tax rates? Why does he have to wait for Congress to raise taxes on the rich? Why doesn't he just do it by executive order? I mean, what would be the difference between that and what he's just done on student loans? I can't think of the difference. I mean, can anybody else? Does anybody know how to differentiate between what the president can do by executive order and what he can't? I mean, the truth is he can't do any of it. There is no legal basis for the president to amend acts of Congress by decree, right? We don't have a dictator in the United States. President Obama, maybe he wants to be, but he's not a king, right? He doesn't rule by edict, by decree, right? All these things have to originate in Congress. They have to go through the House. They got to go through the Senate. And then, and only then, can the president enact them into law by signing the bill. He cannot just use executive order. Where is the opposition? Where is the Supreme Court? Where are the lawyers? They are failing the American public by letting him get away with this. Anyway, we will be back. We got a lot more coming up here on the Peter Schiff Show at SchiffRadio.com.
The Peter Schiff Show. Since the Peter Schiff Show was last on the air, the national debt added another $7.89 million. Luckily, Peter's intelligence is growing twice as fast.
That's incredible.
Welcome back to your source of sanity in an insane world. It's the Peter Schiff Show.
And we are back. This is Peter Schiff here at SchiffRadio.com. Before I get into some of the economic data that came out earlier this morning, I was on Anderson Cooper's 360 last night. If you didn't have a chance to see it, I did favorite that interview on my YouTube channel, Schiff Report, so you can go on there, look at my favorites, and you can see the exchange I had with Cornell Gregory. It's kind of an interesting discussion that we had there on Anderson Cooper. Also, I am going to be on later this evening on Fox News on the Huckabee Show. A lot of this extra publicity is centered around the footage of my trip down to Occupy Wall Street. There's some of it online on my site. You can see what Reason TV put up. Actually, too, some of the best stuff, unfortunately, didn't even make it into some of these cuts. I didn't have anything to do with the production end, so maybe there'll be some more segments that will be produced that have some of what I thought was some of the best parts of the exchanges. I guess maybe the reason people didn't see it that way. But I remember the discussions, and I think I know which ones were the most pertinent. And I think some of the best stuff actually is still on the cutting room floor. So maybe we could pull it off the cutting room floor and put it back onto a video that people can see. But also, I think I'm also going to be on Fox and Friends over the weekend on Sunday morning, discussing this encounter on Wall Street. Also, too, turning to the markets real briefly, we're seeing continued rally in the silver market. Silver's up better than another $1 an ounce today, back over $34. The markets are correcting a little bit from yesterday's huge rally. Even after the show ended, the markets continued to rally. The dollar continued to sell off. It was a big day for commodities. It was a big day for foreign currencies. And bonds really got clobbered yesterday, sending interest rates quite a bit higher. Today, bonds are rising a bit. They're recovering about a third of yesterday's losses. But technically, I think now it looks like we've gotten a lot of damage into the bond market, and so that higher interest rates are, in fact, coming. The euro got as high as about 142 at one point intraday. It closed around 141.5, and right now we're about 141.10. But still, we have a serious head and shoulders bottom in on the euro. We've been talking about that for a while on this show, and my forecasts are being confirmed. Oh, Cornell West, excuse me. The guy that I was debating on CNN is Cornell West, not Cornell Gregory. But anyway, the economic news that came out today. First of all, the government is trying to tell us that the U.S. economy the GDP has now surpassed the level from before the recession began. And clearly, that's not the case. I mean, what the government is doing is looking at what the total value of the U.S. economy is as measured by GDP and comparing it to what the total size of the U.S. economy was, GDP, before the Great Recession began in December of 2007. And the government is saying, okay, we've now fully recovered everything that we lost. Now it's taken 15 quarters to do that. They point out here, this news story, that the typical length of recovery from previous recessions since the Second World War has been 10 quarters, and this time it took us 15 quarters, but the good news is now we've fully recovered. Okay, we'll tell that to the millions and millions of Americans who still don't have jobs. Tell that to the millions of Americans who have seen their after inflation-adjusted income plunge 7.5% in the last couple of years, on top of the maybe 2.5% that it declined during the official period of the recession. And if you believe that the U.S. economy is now the same size it was before this recession, then you have to believe that American workers are so much more productive than they were back in late 2007, because we're able to achieve the same level of economic output with far fewer people contributing to that output. Obviously, that's not the case. So this whole idea that the U.S. economy is now the same size it was in 07 is false. It's all based on an illusion created by government statisticians. It's inflation that is driving the GDP numbers up. But because the government doesn't accurately report all the inflation, it makes it look like the economy is growing. But again, reality conflicts with this illusion. In reality, people don't have jobs, and their purchasing power is eroding because the economy is smaller than it was, despite what these government statistics say. And we got more government statistics today on personal income and spending from September, and this sheds a lot of light on what's going on and why we had the better-than-expected GDP numbers that we just got the other day. Consumer spending rose 0.6% in September, despite the fact that incomes only rose 0.1%. So where did all the money come from that they spent? Because they clearly didn't earn it. Well, it came from either dipping into already low savings or by going deeper into debt, by buying things using credit cards. And that's where this growth is coming from. It's being borrowed from the future, which means the future is looking bleaker and bleaker as we deplete our savings and go deeper into debt to consume when we should be saving. So this is a phony expansion. We want Americans to be saving, not spending. And, of course, I think one of the reasons that spending is up is because prices are up. You need more money to buy stuff. That's the problem. And also, I mentioned the other day, it's probably because a lot of people don't make their mortgage payments. And when you're not making your mortgage payments, hey, you got a little bit of extra disposable income to spend, but the money is not coming from earnings. If you're spending more because you stopped making your mortgage payment, it doesn't mean you're earning more, but you're spending more because you don't have to spend. I guess the mortgage payments don't count as spending. They don't count that as spending money. So if you stop paying your mortgage and start buying food instead, well, now you're spending, and it looks like the economy is growing. Certainly if you're measuring economic growth by spending, that's how it looks. But again, that is not a growing economy. We are digging ourselves into a deeper ditch, and these numbers confirm that. It's all coming from spending, whether it's from the government, whether it's from individuals. And the problem is, where are they getting that money? They're borrowing it. And, when the government is saying that the economy is the same size that it was in December of 2007, the debt is far larger than it was. So we had to borrow trillions and trillions of additional dollars to keep the economy from imploding. But if you were going to look at the balance sheet, our national balance sheet, if you look at GDP and say, okay, let's call that the asset, and then look at the debt and say it's the liability. Well, if the asset is the same, but we now have an enormous liability, what does that say about the net worth of the United States? It's contracted dramatically because our assets are the same and our liabilities have gone through the ceiling. That's a problem. Anyway, we'll be back. We've got a few people on hold. We'll be taking your calls. You're listening to the Peter Schiff Show here at SchiffRadio.com, the gold standard in talk radio.
The Peter Schiff Show. We now return to the Peter Schiff Show. Call in now, 855-4-SCHIFF. That's 855-472-4433. Rebel Radio, the Peter Schiff Show.
And this is Peter Schiff here at SchiffRadio.com. We're taking some calls, 855-4-SCHIFF, 855-4-SCHIFF. Hey, at some point during this show, I got to run, and my brother Andrew is going to be here covering for me in my absence. I think I ended up having a speaking conflict here at the New Orleans conference, although due to some of the technical difficulties, the show started a little late, so I'm not really sure if I'm leaving at the end of the show or somewhere in the middle and then coming back, so we're going to have to play it by ear. But Andy will be able to step in when I have to leave. Anyway, for now, let me go back to the phones. We haven't taken any calls yet. First up is going to be Adam calling from Connecticut. Adam, welcome to the show.
Hi, Peter.
Hello?
Hi, Peter.
Yes, hi. You're on.
Yeah, I have two questions. The first one, if you have time for it, is about the free silver movement in the 1890s, and if you would have been with it at that time or no.
On what? Your question is on what?
The free silver movement.
The free silver? Okay. What about it?
At that time, would you have been with it or against it?
Oh, I never really thought too much about whether or not I would have been with or against it. I don't know. Maybe I would have been against it. I mean, you're talking about just trying to, when we were on a bimetallic standard. We had a gold standard and silver standard. We're both gold and silver. We're circulating as money simultaneously, and oftentimes there was a call to try to make more silver. Basically, what it was about creating more money and therefore creating more inflation. And so I probably would have been against it.
Oh, I see. Do you have time for a second question?
Yeah.
In my home country, in Lebanon, when there are escalation of hostilities on the southern borders with Israel, the central bank usually interferes so it doesn't let the local currency fall. Because people rush into the dollar as a safe haven, it's the world reserve currency. So the central bank interferes to keep the Lebanese pound pegged to the dollars. As a free market, would you say that this is good or bad?
Well, I think it's bad when foreign central banks are endeavoring to suppress the value of their currencies relative to the dollar. I think that is creating a lot of inflation. I'm not sure the particular circumstances that you're referring to, but in general, central banks should not be trying to maintain a value of their currency relative to the dollar, because the dollar itself is losing value, and I think it distorts monetary policies around the world. It creates inflation. It leads to misallocations of resources, asset bubbles, and it should not happen. But anyway, hey, thank you for your call. Next up is Jose calling from California. Are you there? Well, maybe Jose's not there. Let's go to Jeremy from Florida.
Hi, Peter.
Hey, Jeremy, how are you?
I'm sitting on hold and realizing that I think I already answered my question. But I'll do it anyway. It had to revolve around Warren Buffett and how disingenuous I think he is, obviously, as you pointed out, in terms of his taxes, and how it just frustrates me that, everyone I know just seems to bow down to him just because he's this rich guy, one of the wealthiest people in the country, trying to, say things, and they just take it, everything that he says as being correct. But, you pointed out that one of the things that's disingenuous is that he's the largest shareholder of Berkshire Hathaway. So he's already paying, he pays the tax on that itself. And then I guess I was confused because in the same breath you talk about how, corporations don't pay the taxes the shareholders do. But
that's right. Warren Buffett is paying it. Yeah.
Yeah, then I realized that he's the shareholder. So.
Yeah, he's paying the tax as the shareholder. See, what's unique about Warren Buffett is Warren Buffett runs Berkshire Hathaway, but he doesn't pay himself a salary, not a penny.
Right.
So the reason that he's not paying a high personal tax rate is that because he chooses to leave all of his income at Berkshire Hathaway. Instead of paying it to himself in a salary, he just leaves it there. Now, if he wanted to, he can pay a salary out of Berkshire Hathaway, and then he would pay 35% income tax on that salary plus 2.9% or Medicare tax. So, and then he would pay those extra taxes on top of that. But he's not doing it. So he's basically lying, and he's giving, he's creating an impression out there, a false impression. When I was in Occupy Wall Street, all people could say is, Warren Buffett's not paying any taxes. He's paying less than his secretary. Therefore, all rich people are paying less than their secretaries. That's not true. He's paying a lot more than his secretary, and he knows it. And the media has to know it. This is all a bunch of propaganda. Berkshire Hathaway is his company. I mean, imagine if he were the sole shareholder of Berkshire Hathaway. Maybe that would be easier for some people to understand. Let's assume he was the sole shareholder. He owned all the shares. Then, obviously, any taxes that Berkshire Hathaway paid would all be Warren's money. But even though he's not the sole shareholder, he's the biggest shareholder, and that's where all of his income is going because he takes no salary. I mean, who else is going to work and take no salary? Would anybody do that?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly, wrong of him to, criticize the system and then in the same breath, kind of use that system to get around paying taxes in the first place. But I guess my question is as a shareholder, what tax is he paying? The 35%? That's what I don't understand.
Well, no, Berkshire Hathaway is paying. So when let's say Berkshire Hathaway earns $1 billion, and they pay $350 million of that to the federal government, right? Well, that $350 billion is money that belonged to the Berkshire shareholders that was now sent to the U.S. government. So, if Warren Buffett owns a quarter of Berkshire Hathaway stock, a quarter of that $350 million in taxes belonged to Berkshire Hathaway. Because if the corporation didn't pay it in taxes, it could have distributed it in dividends. That was money that Warren could have had in his pocket. Instead, it was sent to Washington to put in Washington's pocket. So that's his money.
Yeah,
look at my corporation. Euro Pacific Capital, I own 100% of my brokerage firm. Let's assume that instead of paying myself a salary, right, because I pay myself a salary, most of my profits are salaried out to me by the end of the year. But let's say I didn't take any salary. I did exactly what Warren Buffett did, right? I didn't pay one dime of my corporate income to myself in salary. My corporation would then pay a huge tax. See, right now my corporation doesn't pay much in income taxes because it doesn't have much income because it's all expensed to me in salary. It has some income, but most of it goes to me. But if I didn't take any of that money, if I left it all in my corporation would pay 35% of that to the federal government, and then I'd pay another 7% of it to the state of Connecticut. So 42% of the profits would be gone. Now, if all my own income was just capital gains, then I'd be in the same situation as Warren Buffett. I'd only be paying a 15% tax, but it wouldn't be. That's not what I'm paying. My corporation that I'm the sole owner of would have paid a huge tax. That was my money, and it went to Washington. So that's what's happening with Warren Buffett. He is paying a much, much higher tax rate, and so this is the big lie. That Warren Buffett isn't paying tax. That's nonsense. Of course he is. He's paying high taxes, but we're using this as an excuse to raise taxes on people who are paying a lot more than Warren Buffett.
Well, maybe Euro Pacific should go public.
Well, what's that going to accomplish?
Well, I'm saying, why wouldn't you just do what he's doing then?
Go public? No.
Pay capital gains instead of...
No. I still pay capital gains on my personal capital gains. My point is that Warren Buffett is choosing not to pull any income out of Berkshire Hathaway. For whatever reason, he's choosing that.
Suggesting you is why don't you do the same thing?
Because then I would have no income. Warren Buffett doesn't need that income from Berkshire Hathaway. Plus, he can always sell stock, which is true. He can always sell stock and then convert that income into capital gains. See, that's one thing that Warren Buffett can do. So if he allows the income to accumulate at Berkshire Hathaway, then the share price is higher because there wasn't any dividends paid out, higher than it would have been had the dividends been paid out instead, and then he can take a capital gains tax. But the point is, the whole thing is a con. The whole thing is a ruse. He is paying high taxes, and anybody who says otherwise, including Warren Buffett, is lying. Anyway, hey, thanks a lot for your call. Next up is going to be Dwayne calling from Fort Worth, Texas. Dwayne, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Peter. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm from Texas. I was kind of thinking you should probably have moved to Texas and run here. I think you would have won here in Texas.
Won what? A Senate seat?
Yeah.
That wouldn't be easy.
Here. Well, anyway, my point, I have a little disagreement on your theory on the consumption tax. I agree the consumption tax is preferable to what we have now, but I think it has a problem, and that is that it decouples the government service from the cost of the service. So, like when you have capitalism, the cost of the goods and services are tied to the price. So if I can't afford a service, I just do without. Where on something like a national sales tax, they're decoupled, so I can just consume as many sources as government services I want, and it doesn't actually change the price that I pay.
What are you talking about? What government services are you talking about?
Well, anything for example, like the postage. That's kind of like a tax I would prefer, where I pay for the stamps I use. So I have incentive to not mail everything in the world because I'd have to pay that price directly. If instead of being paid by a postage stamp, it was being paid by like a national sales tax or something, I might as well ship everything I want. If I have to move from one house to another, I can ship everything.
No, but that's not how. But that's not what we're talking about. They're not talking about replacing. They're not saying we're going to make postage stamps free and you're just going to pay a sales tax on something else. All the sales tax is doing is adding a cost to the goods that you are buying. Yes, if anything, the sales tax might discourage you from buying some goods. That's one of the reasons that the tax is self-corrective as to abuse, because if they make the sales tax so high, people will cut back on buying to the point where the government actually gets less revenue. So that kind of puts a cap on the government's ability to jack that tax rate up too high. Anyway, I'm not even sure if I'm addressing your point or not, because it's a bit confusing. But anyway, you want to stick around. We'll be back with more on the Peter Schiff Show here at SchiffRadio.com.
Did you find a directing sign on the straight and narrow highway?
The Peter Schiff Show.
Would you mind a reflecting sign? Just let it shine.
To President Obama, Secretary Geithner, Madam Pelosi, and all of the socialist econ professors across America, we're sorry. We're sorry. Peter Schiff is back on the air.
This is Peter Schiff here at SchiffRadio.com. On the line right now is Dwayne in Fort Worth, Texas. We're talking about the idea of a consumption tax, and I think Dwayne was a bit confused, and maybe I was confused by his question. But anyway, he's still on the line. Dwayne, so what exactly is confusing you?
Okay, let me. I'm confusing you. I'm probably talking too fast, but. I have basically 2 points. The first point about the sales tax, the national sales tax, is while it's true I can refrain from buying goods and so I can pay less taxes that way, I can't refrain from buying everything. I have to buy gas, electricity, food, and my car breaks, I got to get it repaired or buy a new one or whatever.
Well, absolutely. Although you can certainly buy less gas as the price goes up. Yes, you're not going to buy no gas, but if you raise the gas tax high enough, more people might take public transportation, more people might use carpool. So the government still has to strike a balance between a tax that's so high that it actually ends up producing less revenue.
Yeah, no, but I think what will end up happening is as their tax is bringing less money, they'll be just more inclined to increase the rate, and rather than just do without.
They might. Well, look, but you have to realize that we're talking about a national sales tax that replaces the income tax. So, even though prices are going to be higher because of a sales tax, consumers are going to have more money to pay those sales taxes because they're not going to be paying income taxes. Now, of course, for people who are paying no income taxes right now and who are escaping taxation, if you put a sales tax, then they're finally going to have to pay taxes. But that's a good thing. I don't want there to be a class of people that pay no taxes at all, because then they're going to support every tax increase that there is. Anytime there's a program that costs money, they'll be in favor of it because they bear none of the cost. So if we make sure that everybody is bearing part of the cost, then everybody is going to have skin in the game, and not everybody is going to be so eager to support some new spending program when they realize that they're going to be stuck with paying part of the bill.
I agree with that part. I guess what I'm saying, and this probably goes to my second point, is that rather than taxing the consumption of privately produced goods that have nothing really to do with the government, why not tax the consumption of public goods, like the goods that the government provides?
Well,
so if I use more government service, in theory, I mean, this is kind of hard to actually on a phone call to say exactly what I mean here, but if I use a certain amount of government resources, I should pay more. And
I know what you mean by that, and I am in favor of financing those things with user fees, such as if the government builds a road, they can put a toll on the road, and they can pay for the road by collecting the toll. That way, the only people that pay for the road are the people that actually benefit from its use. And, of course, everybody benefits from the use, let's say, because maybe there's a truck that's carrying produce, and maybe I don't use that road, but I shop at the market where the produce is. But, of course, if the truck driver is paying the tax for hauling his cargo, that's going to be built into the price of what I'm consuming. So I agree that a user fees are good, but they don't always work. For example, how would you pay for national defense? How would you pay for the Army and the Air Force with a user fee? You can't.
I would do it based on. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I still here?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would do that based on how much property you own. So, like, if the military has to defend my 2 acres and you have 20, then you take more of the military defense service than I do, and you would pay 10 times as much for that part of the budget, not everything, just the defense part of the budget.
Yeah, well, I mean, but it's, it's not just property they're protecting. Everybody's life is, it's not, what about the value of your life? I mean, somebody could be very rich, and it's also not property. Somebody can be very rich, but decide to rent a small apartment. Somebody could be a lot poorer, but just happen to have all their money in their house. I mean, so if somebody has most of his money in stocks and things like that, why should he pay a lower tax than somebody who happens to have all of his net worth tied up in his property? But, of course, also the federal government constitutionally can't really levy a property tax unless it's apportioned among the states. So it's very difficult to do that. That would require a constitutional amendment to have the federal government be able to impose property taxes in the same manner that the states impose property taxes. Look, I think that taxing consumption is much better than taxing property, because that way the people who, enjoy their lives more, right? Just earning money doesn't count because you don't actually use it for yourself. Where you enjoy your wealth is when you spend stuff. When you buy things, when you travel, you take vacations, you buy clothes, you buy cars, you buy boats, you do things that are fun, right? And let's tax people on that basis, and that makes more sense. I mean, obviously, so if you're a lot richer, you're going to spend a lot more money, you're going to pay a lot more taxes than people that aren't. I think that is the fairest, easiest way to fund government, and that's the bottom line, is we have to fund it somehow. And I will agree, I don't want to fund all the government we have right now. We have too much government. So I'd like to have a lot less government, so whatever tax system that we have ends up transferring a lot less money to Washington. But I think the tax system that is most consistent with economic growth, that is most consistent with the principles of our founders when they created this country, is a system of excise taxes on articles of consumption. That's how the country ran until we had the income tax in 1913, and it worked well until 1913. I think it will work well again, despite the fact that we now have a bigger government. Although I think that if we had to go back to excise-type taxes, we wouldn't be able to have such a big government. I think the government would have to shrink if it was forced to collect taxes in the same manner that taxes were collected prior to 1913.
I think it would increase either way. I think the mere fact that you have a set of people who don't mind bigger government, and they decide to vote in people who give them more services, that makes the other people who are usually not inclined to do that, well, they say to themselves, well, heck, if that person over there is going to use the government to tax me for their own good, then I should be taxing them for my good too. And it kind of encourages, even though a lot of people are conservative, like in Texas, for example, everyone here is conservative, but you still find tons of cases where people are mad that other guys are taking their tax dollars for their own good, and they think the only recourse they have is to, well, let's tax them too. And
well, I guess, the economists call it rent-seeking. Yes, everybody is always looking to get something from government, especially, if they don't think it costs them anything, it costs somebody else. That's why we have to minimize all the things that government does. And the less government can do, the less power government has, then the less favors it can hand out. And then you don't have all that. We want to keep a small government so taxes are low, so they're an afterthought, so people don't mind paying them. And so taxes do the least amount of harm to the economy, towards resource allocation, decision-making, risk-taking, all the like. The problem is now taxes and government regulations are influencing everything we do, and that's why we're making so many mistakes and we're in so much trouble. Anyway, we'll be right back. We've got more of the Peter Schiff Show coming up after this break, so stay tuned.
Peter Schiff Show.
You make no friends in the pits and you take no prisoners. 1 minute you're up $500,000 in soybeans, and the next, boom, your kids don't go to college and they've repossessed your Bentley. Are you with me?
The revolution starts now.
We have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Turn those machines back on!
You are about to enter the Peter Schiff Show.
Show me the money!
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
The Peter Schiff Show is on. Call in now. 855-4-SHIFT. That's 855-472-4433.
I don't know when they decided that they wanted to make a virtue out of selfishness.
Your money, your stories, your freedom. The Peter Schiff Show.
Well, we are back. This is Peter Schiff here at SchiffRadio.com. We're doing this show live from the Hilton Hotel here in New Orleans, Louisiana, at the New Orleans Investment Conference. And on Monday, I will be back at home doing the show from the Schiff Radio studio in Weston, Connecticut. But in the meantime, I am on the floor of the exhibit hall. It's pretty busy. There's a lot of people this year that registered for this conference. I think 1,100 or 1,200 people. It's normally a pretty intimate conference, and this is one of the more livelier ones that I've been at. A lot of good speakers here as well. Good time, and hopefully some of the people who missed it this year will be around next year. Anyway, we've got on hold David is calling from Hong Kong. David, good evening.
Yeah, how are you? How are you, sir?
I am well.
I want to talk to you a bit about the Michael Moore. First of all, thank you for the going down to the Occupy Wall Street. I think you represent the 1% very well, and thank you for being the voice of reason. Now, Michael Moore, I think he's completely ignorant. Now, the reason why I say that is because I've reviewed his material. I've seen his documentary, Capitalism, A Love Story. He's anti-capitalism, but he doesn't tell you what system he would prefer. For example, he wouldn't say to you that he wants socialism, and he certainly wouldn't tell you that he's pro-communism. So he's simply anti-capitalism. He doesn't have any solutions.
Well, I mean, if he were to design a system, according to what he believes, what would he design? I mean, I'm sure it would be a fascist type system. He wouldn't advocate that the government outright seize everybody's assets, but he would advocate basically a fascism where the government really controlled the economy through high taxes and regulation and a social welfare state, kind of, with the Marxist mentality of from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. I think that, that's really where his philosophy might lie. Then again, it could all be a big ruse. He could just be a great capitalist, and he realized there's a market for this socialist nonsense, this propaganda, and so he's feeding that market by creating a product that he knows there's demand for. For all we know, he's a complete hypocrite, and this is just a marketing scam on his part. I have no idea.
Exactly. I mean, one point is he doesn't tell you what system he wants, and he doesn't give you a solution. I mean, so he's simply anti-capitalism, but he doesn't tell you what he wants, what he's pro. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Well, but when you see him though flat out deny that he's a member of the 1%, I mean, there you've got to question his integrity. He says, "How can I be in the 1%?" What do you mean? I mean, does he not even know what medium income is in this country, or what type of income would qualify you, or what kind of net worth would qualify you to be in that 1%? Because it's not a very high hurdle. And and then when he was asked, well, if you're a millionaire, and he said, no, I'm not a millionaire. I mean, not a million. How can he not be a millionaire? I mean, that's not even having a lot of money. I mean, $1 million. I mean, that's not what it used to be. There's just almost no way that Michael Moore could have a net worth below $1 million. I mean, I bet all of my net worth that's impossible.
Well, I agree with that because I'm an employee and I've got that net worth.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a movie like Fahrenheit 9/11. And the thing is, though, whatever he made on that movie, he's suing his distributor for like $20 or $30 million, claiming that's how much he was shortchanged. So, I mean, he must have made something big to say that he was paid $30 million too little.
And Peter, why did he not come on to his show? I mean, why did he refuse the invitation?
Well, would you want to be on my show if you were him? What does Michael Moore have to gain by coming on my show? I mean, I'm going to make him look like a fool, and then I'm going to put it on YouTube. Why the hell would he want to sign up for that?
Well, that just shows, he's just telling lies. I don't think he's being truthful to the American people. I don't think he's being honest. That's all. So, that just shows what type of character he is.
Yeah. Well, the one thing we know for sure, whether he's telling the truth or whether he's lying, the one thing we know for sure, he's making a lot of money, so he is certainly a capitalist in every sense of the word. He has found a niche. He has found a consumer demand, and he has found a product that they want. They're willing to pay their hard-earned money for it, and in the process, Michael Moore has become a very, very rich man and a card-carrying member of the 1%, whether he admits it or not. But anyway, David, thank you for your call. Next up is Peter calling from Queens, New York. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Look, I was just watching that, your Occupying Wall Street video where you're squaring off with all these, degenerates. And here's the thing. Instead of arguing, telling you why they think you're wrong, it's the same thing with the slur that they hit Reagan with. Oh, Reagan's an idiot. Trickle-down economics, it doesn't work. Well, why doesn't it work? Oh, it just doesn't because Reagan's an idiot. And that's all there's this one guy.
Well, a lot of the rap against trickle-down economics is they say that we had trickle-down economics, the economy is worse, therefore trickle-down economics doesn't work. Of course, there is no causal link there. You can't just say because one thing happened and another thing happened that there's a causal relationship there. You can't jump that. It's bad logic. There are a lot of other things that you can blame the bad economy on. You can't just simply pick trickle-down economics. And, of course, we didn't even get a trickle-down in the way that it was originally envisioned. But, of course, what trickle-down means is that when businesses invest their money and create jobs and produce products, that the benefits trickle down to everybody else. And that isn't something that Reagan invented. That is, by definition, capitalism. That's what Adam Smith wrote about in The Wealth of Nations. That was nothing new. Just because Reagan chose to describe that process, right, as trickle down, doesn't mean that Reagan invented it, that it was some kind of crazy experiment that we tried and it didn't work. Trickle down economics is what we had from day one. It's what Adam Smith outlined as capitalism, the founder of economics. Hey, during the break, I got a text here from my producer about Michael Moore and his staff. Apparently, a lot of his workers have been complaining that they're underpaid. Of course, they could always quit if they think they're underpaid, but I don't know why Michael Moore doesn't just give them higher salaries every time they complain. And, of course, apparently also his employees have expressed an interest in unionizing, but Michael Moore refuses to allow them to form a union. Talk about hypocritical, huh? I mean, all he wants to do is criticize other companies for now allowing their employees to unionize, yet Michael Moore refuses to allow his employees. I'd like to see all of Michael Moore's employees unionize and then go on strike and demand profit sharing and demand that he share more of the wealth with the working man than keeping it for himself. In fact, I also think that Michael Moore's customers should demand special subsidies from Michael Moore to see his movies. After all, why should they have to pay? They should be able to see those movies for free. They shouldn't have to enrich Michael Moore in the process. Anyway, thank you for the call. Hey, we've already got the segment coming to an end. We will be right back. We got more of the Peter Schiff Show here on SchiffRadio.com, the gold standard in talk radio.
The Peter Schiff Show. To President Obama, Secretary Geithner, Madam Pelosi, and all of the socialist econ professors across America. We're sorry. We're sorry. Peter Schiff is back on the air.
This is Peter Schiff here at SchiffRadio.com. The markets are now up. The Dow was initially down this morning, but it is now up about 10 points. So we're getting a little bit of a follow-through now from yesterday's big rally. Earlier this morning I mentioned that silver prices were up about $1. I was actually reading the quote wrong. They were only up about a dime. Now they're up about 20 cents. So silver is gaining on that, although gold is now positive on the day. Gold was negative earlier this morning. Anyway, I'm going to go back to the phones. Up next is Nathan calling from California. Nathan, you're on.
I saw you today, Peter, on Reason TV.
Reason, they're the guys that filmed me at Occupy Wall Street.
Yeah, it was really, it was well done. It was good. I really liked the part when somebody asked you about Roosevelt and his policies, and they were just devastated when you countered their dogma.
I wish too. We got to get more footage on, because a lot of those discussions, unfortunately, some of the best exchanges and some of the best lines didn't really make it. I mean, the best stuff, unfortunately, is on the cutting room floor. So we got to put it back together and put some of that best stuff out there where people can see it.
Oh yeah, I'd love to see it. Hey,
Yeah.
my question is with Milton Friedman versus the Austrians. What are the differences? It seems like they don't see eye to eye on everything. And I've read Free to Choose, and it's a really influential book for me.
Yeah, well, the main difference between Friedman and the Austrians is on money. I mean, Friedman really wanted to have money supply grow by a set amount each year, and so Friedman, in that sense, was in favor of not being on a gold standard and having the Federal Reserve manage the monetary system by controlling the growth of money supply and having it. I don't know what he wanted. Would he wanted 2% a year, 3% a year, but to have the Federal Reserve target money supply growth and have it constant at a particular rate. That would be certainly an improvement over the way that monetary policy is run today. So I would much rather live in a Friedman-type world than in the Keynesian world that we live in today. But I think that was the basic difference, whereas the Austrian theory was to have more of a free market in money, gold standard. But if you look at how Milton Friedman viewed the role of government as far as government policy and its effects on the economy and whether government should stay out or where it should be involved, they're pretty much, the Austrians and Milton Friedman are pretty much, seeing eye to eye. I mean, I find very little to disagree with, if anything, when it comes to Milton Friedman's basic role of macroeconomics. The only time that you're going to find any area of agreement is specifically on money and monetary policy, but not on fiscal policy, taxes, spending, all of that. I mean, he's very much Austrian.
Would he say the gold standard is kind of a ridiculous relic? He wouldn't agree with it?
No. Well, I think given a choice between the monetary policy we have today and a gold standard, he would choose a gold standard. There's no question in my mind that he would. Now, he had a preference for something else, but what Milton Friedman wanted, we don't have. And part of the reason that what he wanted doesn't work is because you can't trust politicians to follow that discipline. They're not going to limit the growth of money supply in the way that Milton Friedman envisioned. They just can't do it. The only thing that will limit it is gold. And I think maybe if Milton Friedman had lived long enough to experience all this, he might have decided to rethink his position.
Yeah, it's a shame he's not around to see this and hear what he has to say about this whole what's happened since 2008.
Yeah. I agree. It'd be great if he was around, and so we can get his take. Unfortunately, we just have people trying to figure out what his take might have been and maybe spin it to their own agendas. But anyway, hey, thank you for the call. Next up is Max calling from Chicago. Max, welcome to the Peter Schiff Show.
Hey, Peter, thanks for taking my call. I'm almost embarrassed to tell you I'm from Chicago. A story about President Obama.
Yeah, thanks for that, by the way.
Hey, listen, I was watching some of the Reason TV report or videos that are up on YouTube already, and I had to say you almost had a Gary Johnson's dog moment when you asked somebody if they wanted to lower prices, and then some lady who was standing behind you yelled, "No!"
Well, how does that work with how is that a Gary Johnson's dog? I'm not really following that.
Yeah, I just thought it was ridiculous. You know, some of the people you're talking to, how ignorant they are. We had this lady sitting right behind you who I guess wants to be paying like $10 a gallon for gasoline.
Oh yeah, I mean it was crazy. It was crazy that they denied that they wanted lower prices. But actually, the one guy that I was talking with, I think it was a black gentleman. I forget, but I had a long discussion with him, and I asked him again. You can't see that because it was cut out of the tape. But I asked him again, don't you want lower prices? And he said no. And I said, well, wait a minute. So if you go shopping, if you see two hats and they're identical and one of them is like $20 and one is $30, which one are you? He refused to answer the question. See, he wanted to pretend that he would just as easily pay higher prices, and I know he was full of it. I mean, anybody who was listening to it would see that, of course, he's going to pay the lowest price possible. And I tried to explain that's why businesses have to keep their costs down, because consumers want to buy lower prices. And if a business just decided to pay workers all the money that he claims, they would go out of business because nobody would buy their products.
Yeah, it's I mean, even just listening to a lot of people down there, and it's kind of, it almost seems like they need to be educated a bit, and you're kind of doing a job of that down there, but it's just, they just have these, like, impossible views, and their first instinct is always, we need to raise taxes, higher prices, print all the money in the world, and then it just takes 2 seconds to correct them on that.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of good stuff in there, because a lot of these discussions had a lot more to them. You just can't see all the back and forth in there because you take 3 hours and condense it down into 18 minutes. So a lot of the stuff's not there.
Well, I've been a long-time listener, Peter, first-time caller. Thanks for fighting the good fight down there for us.
Oh, you're welcome. Anyway, thanks for the call. Yeah, anyway, looking back at what's going on in the markets today, remember we had that huge rise in crude oil prices yesterday. They were down at one point this morning. Crude was down about $2, and now it's recovered about 2/3 of those losses. Crude oil is back above $93 a barrel, and commodity prices in general were very strong yesterday. And the trend, I think, is going to continue. This is a consequence of the weakening dollar, the monetary policy. In fact, if you look at the CRB index, it bottomed out at the beginning of October at 292. It's now at 323. And remember that article I read for Bloomberg that tried to say that inflation had peaked based on the big drop we had in commodity prices in September. And yes, in general, commodity prices had a pretty big decline in September, but we've reversed most of that decline. The CRB, though, is still below its peak price from early September, even though oil prices, crude oil prices, are actually higher than they were at any point in September. And this is going to continue, especially if the rally continues in stocks, which to me it looks like it is going to do. And you're going to see continued weakness in the dollar. By the way, the Japanese yen, we've been talking a lot about the Japanese yen on the show, at another all-time record high yet again today. It's not a huge move. It's small, but it still moves the yen into record high territory, the dollar into record low territory. And again, the only reason that we're not having an even bigger move up in the Japanese yen is because of the intervention, because the finance minister is there every night, threatening intervention. Yet despite all that talk, all that intervention, the yen keeps marching higher anyway, which shows you just how strong the currency is and how weak the U.S. dollar is if it still can't rise given all that help. Anyway, we'll be right back. I think my brother is going to be picking up the mic at the other end of the break. No, I guess no, he's not. Anyway, I'm going to stick around. This is Peter Schiff here at SchiffRadio.com.
The Peter Schiff Show. We now return to the Peter Schiff Show. Call in now, 855-4-SCHIFF. That's 855-472-4433. Rebel Radio, the Peter Schiff Show.
This is Peter Schiff. We are back here at SchiffRadio.com. We're taking some calls live at 855-4-SCHIFF, 855-4-SCHIFF, and I'll go back to the phones. On hold from Brooklyn is Ilya. Anyway, welcome to the show.
Yeah, hi, Peter. Thanks for taking my call.
Thanks for calling.
I saw your video on Occupy the Wall Street, and it's apparent that a lot of blame there for the current situation is focused either on the Wall Street or on the government. But isn't Wall Street and the government, isn't that just a reflection of our society? You know, shouldn't people be blaming themselves and trying to educate each other rather than protesting like that?
Yeah, well, clearly, I mean, we're voting for these people. We put them in office. So, yeah, I'm not saying that the American people are blameless. I mean, no. I mean, we all share in the blame. We have the government that we asked for in many respects. Now, I didn't ask for it. I didn't vote for any of these clowns. So, clearly, there are some Americans who, you know, did not vote for these politicians. So, I don't know. It's hard to blame them. But, yeah, I mean, you know, with the educational institutions have failed us, you know, with parents. I mean, we have just allowed our rights to slip away. You know, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. That's what our founding fathers warned us about, and we haven't been eternally vigilant, and so we have lost a lot of freedom, and we're suffering as a result.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think the more people that feel that there's something wrong with the current system, they should become more active, you know, in their local communities and trying to, you know, spread the message of freedom and economic freedom.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm trying to do. I mean, I'm you know, and other people, I'm not the only one out there. You know, we're doing what we can to try to break through these stereotypes, break through the cognitive dissonance, get people to comprehend, because it's not easy. I mean, think about all of the nations throughout history that have been captivated by the ideology of the left. I mean, think about all these communist revolutions. I mean, how did it happen? I mean, it was just a very intoxicating idea that the masses tend to fall for, because it's happened many, many times. Despite all the evidence, it doesn't work. Look at all the people around the world that have embraced this failed Marxist ideology.
Yeah, and it's just absurd how that lady was saying that you have to share your success. Just absurd to me.
Well, of course, my point, though, was success is already shared with my customers and with my employees. My customers, and that's not just true of me, it's true of any business person, their success is shared with their customers. I mean, look at, you know, everybody's talking about Steve Jobs from Apple, but didn't he share his success? How many people benefited from his inventions? How many people who are using Apple computers, iPhones, iPads, aren't they sharing in Steve Jobs' success? What about all of his employees, all the people that work for Apple? Aren't Apple employees sharing in Steve Jobs' success without government doing anything? What about all the investors? What about people that bought stock in Apple Computer? Aren't all those investors sharing in Steve Jobs' success? The idea that that's not enough, that somehow the government has to then take whatever he has personally, take half of it, or one person was saying 70% of it, and just give it to other people because he needs to share his success? Well, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, and he didn't need any bailouts or subsidies.
No, of course not. You know, why? You know, if you're saying so people should have to share their successes, what about their losses? What if I decide to start a business and I lose money? Who's going to line up to share in my losses? I wonder how many people in that crowd, if I had said, hey, I started in a new business and I lost a bunch of money, and so I want you guys to help share in my losses. You know, nobody wants to share in somebody's losses, but sure, share in their success. But that, you know, you can't have it that way. It's not, you know, heads I win, tails you lose, or you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter.
All right, thanks for your call. Next up is Amith calling from San Diego. Amith, you're welcome to the Peter Schiff Show.
Thank you very much, Peter. First off, I want to thank you for your YouTube channel. I've been educated a lot about Austrian economics and a lot of stuff. My question is, since I've kind of conducted a self-education of Austrian economics, I'm trying to find out what particular books or particular things that I should attempt to read to familiar myself about the particular system, because everybody that I seem to talk to or people who seem to teach economics tend to teach the Keynesian way, and the Keynesian way seems to be glorified. So to actually educate myself about Austrian economics is somewhat difficult, so that's why I'm coming here.
Well, it's actually not difficult at all. I've written a lot of stuff myself. Even my latest book, How an Economy Grows and Why It Crashes, is a really basic introduction to the ideas of Austrian economics. So I would start there. I mean, read that book, but also go to my website at Europac.net and look at my recommended reading list. There's a lot of good books that I read when I was younger that helped influence my way of thinking. So you can read those books as well. I mean, the information is out there. Yes, it's not, the mainstream, educational establishment isn't going to lead you in that direction. But the information is still out there and pretty easy to find.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, thank you for the call. Anyway, going back to the phones, next up is AJ calling from Lansing, Michigan. AJ, welcome to the Peter Schiff Show.
Hey, how's it going, Peter?
It's going well. How are you?
Good, thanks. It's a little off topic, but I was wondering if you became, if Ron Paul became the Republican primary, would you, if he asked you, would you go on and be his, would you go on the ticket and be his vice president? And if not, or, if he doesn't ask or whatnot, would you be the Secretary of Treasury if he asked you to do that?
Well, I mean, these are all hypothetical questions because Ron Paul isn't the nominee, and I wouldn't even want to presuppose that if he was the nominee that he would ask me. But basically, if Ron Paul got the Republican nomination, I doubt that he's going to ask me to be his BP. I don't see how I would really, I don't know that I would balance out that ticket in a way that would make it more likely for him to win. But if he were to offer me that slot, it might mean that they polled on it and they were convinced that I actually increased his chance. I kind of find it hard to believe that that would be the case. But if Ron Paul conducted some kind of solid study and he actually believed that having me on the ticket would increase the chances of him winning, then I would definitely do it because I would want him to win and I would want to do what I could to make that happen. And if that means being on the ticket, I'm on the ticket. If it means not being on the ticket, I don't want to be on the ticket. I'd rather not be on the ticket and have Ron Paul win than be on the ticket and have him lose. But I really have no idea. My gut feeling would be that I would not be the smartest political choice. But who knows? I mean, if it turns out that I was, then obviously I would do it. As far as being Secretary of the Treasury, of course. I mean, if he asked me, I mean, I'm not expecting that. But if he became president, first that'd be great. And I would assist him in any way that he asked. I would consider it an honor and a privilege, although it's not necessarily anything that I expect to happen.
Right on. All right. Thanks a lot, Peter. You're the best. I follow you all the time, and thanks.
Hey, thanks for the call. Anyway, yeah, I hope we're in the position. I hope Ron does get to put me on some kind of short list, because that would mean he'd actually have the nomination. Wouldn't that be great? I went to a small little fundraiser here for Ron Paul yesterday here in New Orleans. He's got a new, organization or campaign staff ramping up here in Louisiana. So we wish them all well, and hopefully Ron can continue to gain in momentum. I think it's interesting, too, that Rick Perry now is kind of threatening not to participate in future debates. I'm not really sure, who he's threatening with that, but, I think it's kind of interesting because here you have a candidate who's now saying that he might not even participate in the debates, but then you have another candidate like Gary Johnson who doesn't even have the opportunity. I'm sure Gary Johnson would participate in every debate that he was invited to, and the fact that there is one candidate who has the opportunity but chooses to forego it, I think that really says a lot. And of course, we all know why Rick Perry doesn't want to debate. I mean, he's not doing very well in those debates. I think that was a political blunder, again, to admit that, because now the feeling would be, well, wait a minute, what if you get the nomination? What are you going to do, not debate President Obama? So anyway, I think that campaign can't get out of their own way. They're their own worst enemy in many cases. Anyway, though, let me go back to the phones. Next up is Kevin calling from Montreal, Canada, the home of the newest Euro-Pacific Canada office, which just opened up recently up in Montreal. I don't know if Kevin's had a chance to stop by, but welcome to the show.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for taking my call. I
for
think
calling.
you're really doing a good job with educating us. You really flipped the switch for me in terms of economics when I read your book, How an Economy Grows and Why It Crashes. I have a question, actually it's a little different question about China's invasion in countries in Africa. I'm originally from Kenya, which is in East Africa, and I was there over last year and noticed that Chinese companies are coming in and building the infrastructure, but on the flip side is that they might control most of the resources. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a sign of the growing influence of China in the global economy. I mean, the Chinese economy is becoming wealthier, and they're using their wealth to accumulate assets, resources, and companies all around the world. So as America racks up liabilities, as we keep going deeper into debt to consume, China is using the wealth that is being generated by their production to increase their influence, to increase their ownership of companies and resources. They have a vibrant, glowing economy, and you're seeing the consequences, all over the world, and we don't, and we're also seeing those consequences. Anyway, we will be right back. This is Peter Schiff here at SchiffRadio.com, so don't go away.
The Peter Schiff Show. Since the Peter Schiff Show was last on the air, the national debt added another $7.89 million. Luckily, Peter's intelligence is growing twice as fast.
That's incredible.
Welcome back to your source of sanity in an insane world. It's the Peter Schiff Show.
This is Peter Schiff here at SchiffRadio.com. Looking at this whole idea again about what we have to do to stimulate the economy and what the economists think we need to do. We're getting more of this nonsense again on the airwaves. I get a lot of entertainment, a lot of sound clips from MSNBC, particularly the Reverend Al Sharpton show. And so here we go again. This time the Reverend's guest is Representative Barney Frank. And again, here's Barney Frank repeating the same old Keynesian nonsense that we need to run up the deficit in the short run to grow the economy. Here, cut number 6.
House Republicans keep saying they have ideas for jobs. Are they credible?
No. They are literally doing the opposite of what virtually every economist, except for a handful on the right, think, which is, at this point, you should not be further retrenching government spending. Yes, over the long term, we want to reduce the deficit, but the near term is, well, one example. In every month for the last year, the private sector has gained jobs, although generally not enough to meet what we need, and the public sector has lost jobs. Firefighters, public works employees, teachers, cops have been laid off. So, again, there is an overwhelming consensus that the short term, and this comes from Bush appointees like Ben Bernanke at the Federal Reserve, you need to do some things that stimulate. They go in the opposite direction.
Okay, so here he is saying that virtually every economist agrees that we need more government spending to grow the economy, that there's an overwhelming consensus of economists who agree that we need to increase government spending. And he basically says, Ben Bernanke, for example, thinks this is what we have to do. Who cares what Ben Bernanke thinks? He's gotten everything else wrong. What makes Barney Frank thinks he's gotten it right now? In fact, Barney Frank has gotten everything wrong. Barney Frank is one of the principal reasons that Fannie and Freddie were able to guarantee so many mortgages, because he fought tooth and nail against every attempt by Congress to rein in Fannie and Freddie, because he was one of the biggest recipients of campaign contributions from those two organizations that he was protecting. So he shouldn't even be allowed to talk on this subject. But, of course, he's wrong. Every economist doesn't agree. I mean, he says maybe a handful of economists, meaning, I guess, how many are in a handful? I don't know how big his hand is, but clearly I'm in that handful, and I think I got a lot of company. Maybe what he says is virtually every Keynesian economist agrees. Yeah, well, who cares what the Keynesians thinks? They're always wrong. Of course, all these economists who agree that we need more government spending to solve the problems are the very economists who said there were no problems to solve back in 2006, 2007. Remember, Ben Bernanke was the guy that says there was no housing bubble. And then after it burst, he said, don't worry, it's not going to hurt employment. He was wrong on everything he said. Barney Frank should not be holding him up as some validation for what he wants to do. If anything, Ben Bernanke is a contrarian indicator. If Ben Bernanke says something, then you want to do the opposite. Anyway, let's play the rest of this cut. It's number 7.
The Republican plan is, first of all, cut taxes more for businesses, by the way, that already have a great deal of cash, that are telling us that the problem is, and this is the central economic point, there isn't enough demand. They're not going to start producing more if they think they can't sell it. Well, they won't be able to sell it if we don't get more demand. And if you cut unemployment compensation and you fire public employees and you don't put people to work in the construction trades, then you don't get the demand.
Yeah, but where is the government going to get all the money to hire the public employees, to put people to work in the manner that Barney Frank suggests? Well, they're going to print it. And printing money and giving it to people doesn't create demand. It creates inflation because the money does not come with any production associated with it. People just get money. They spend it to buy what's already been produced. The problem isn't demand, it's supply. And how do we get more supply? We have to produce more. And how do we produce more? We have to save more. We have to invest, and then we have to hire people and put them to work productively. None of that's going to happen if we follow the Barney Frank, Ben Bernanke monetary and fiscal policy combination. Anyway, let me go back to the phones. It's probably the last caller. Mike calling from Des Moines, Iowa. You're on with Peter Schiff. Is Mike there? I don't know. I thought I had a call. Are there any calls on hold? All right. I don't know that I have time. You know, I was saving that call for the last. I don't know if I have time to go into a full another block of sound and then comment on it because we only have a minute or two left of the show. Just going to remind everybody, tune in later on today. I'm going to be taping the Huckabee Show. It's on Fox News. Also, those of you who have yet to sign up, we still have seating available for my 2 lectures, seminars in Southern California on November 7th and 8th. November 7th down in Orange County. I think that one is filling up pretty quickly. We have 500 seat capacity at both events. Then the following day at UCLA on the 8th. And also I'm doing, this is not open to the public, just to let people know again that it's out there. I'm going to be participating in a debate. We were able to find some economists willing to debate me. There weren't many that were willing to do it, but we did find one. He's going to be there. So I have a debate on the economy and what the appropriate policy response should be, maybe who caused the crisis. That's going to be for the UCLA students. But then in the same venue, we're going to have an event open to the public. So you do need to buy a ticket. You need to go to Europac.net, my website, and sign up. You need to pre-register for either of these 2 events if you want to go. There is a $20 fee. That fee is mainly there to make sure that people don't sign up and then don't show up, in which case other people that wanted to go would be denied that potential. But we are throwing in a free copy of How an Economy Grows and Why It Crashes. Those books sell for $20, so in any event, you really just get, you're not paying for the lecture, you're getting a copy of the book, which I will be more than happy to sign. If you already have a copy of my book, well, you can keep the signed copy, and you can give the other copy away. Also, I should be on, again, Fox and Friends on Sunday morning. I think it's going to be about 7:45 or so Eastern time, so people on the West Coast, I doubt you'll be awake early enough to see that, but if you're on the East Coast, potentially you can watch that show as well. Anyway, the markets have been a bit of a roller coaster this morning. Now we are back. We had surrendered the gains. The Dow was up about 30 points or so the last time I looked at my screen. Now we're back in the red, down about 15 points. Gold, again, which had recovered, which was up $4 or $5, is now down about $8. But I think you would expect this kind of choppy activity to consolidate a major, major move that we had yesterday across the board. Right? This was just not in one area of the market. This was a huge move in stocks, in currencies, in bonds, and I think a lot happened as a result of the announcement that came out of Europe with respect to what they were doing with the Greek situation and sovereign debt in general there in the Eurozone. Anyway, that's it for today. Have a great weekend, everybody. I will be back again on Monday live from my Weston studio for another 2 hours of the Peter Schiff Show on SchiffRadio.com, the gold standard in talk radio. Bye for now.